Okay, good morning and welcome to Yeshiva YouTube. Iyun with Benzion. Today's daf is Nazir daf Chav Dalid, number not Chav Dalid, Nazir Chav Gimel, number 23. Um, I want to talk today about something I talked about at the end of Mazak Nadarim. It takes me back many years. When I was first becoming from, I was 18 years old. I went to Yeshiva University. Most of my friends went to the gap year programs in Israel. I didn't end up going there. I went to Yeshiva University. I was kind of rebellious at that point. I wasn't, I even have a video on YouTube where I went around, Washington Heights making this cute video for my sister's bar mitzvah. I was asking all these Hispanic and African American people to wish Mazel Tov my sister Edie for her bar mitzvah. I played it at her bar mitzvah. It was hilarious. People were on the floor. They said, "Wow, this guy has a future." And you know what? I started my YouTube channel a couple of years ago. I posted this video. The video's there. It has like 50 views. I'm like posted it, I'm like, wow, this is gonna get a ton of views. Now it is terrible audio and terrible video quality because the video was done in the year 2000 exactly. So it's terrible quality of the video, but you can hear basically and make it out. But this is before YouTube. YouTube was 2005, I believe, started. So I was predating YouTube. That was my younger years, and then eventually that was before or in the middle when I was becoming more from. And in the coming months after that, I became more from, and it was primarily due to my first real Rebbe in my life, Rabbi Yaakov Konigsberg, who's currently, I believe, Rosh Hashiva in Yeshiva University in the YP program. He's a big Talmud Chacham, knows a lot, and he really helped me. He really gave me a love for learning. He introduced the analytical approach to learning, and he made it very simple. Two sides into the analytics. Later years, I became more developed. My main Rabbi, Rabbi Yaakov Friedman, who taught me, three ways of learning, the two opposites, and then the third middle way of, viewing a chakira, investigation, analytical debate about something, And to this day, I find legitimately when I do the Iyun shiurim that it's just a lot easier to just take two sides because, it's all hypothetical anyway. Just take two sides, it makes it more simple. So I remember when I was becoming more from, it was around Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur time, and we were walking down the stairs after a shiur or something like that, and I asked him, what's worse? Is it worse to have kavanah to do an avera and not do the avera, or is it worse to not have kavanah to do avera and end up doing an avera? Like, for example, you do malacha on Shabbos, you didn't know it's Shabbos, the shogeg, you bring korban chatas. What if I wasn't really thinking about this Gemara. I didn't know this Gemara was Nazir, this Mishnah today, Chav Gilel and Aleph. But what if you intend to do an avera and you end up doing an avera? For example, the Mishnah here says she took a naziris upon herself, and then her husband was made for. He heard about it. He's made for the naziris, and she didn't know that her husband was made for the naziris, and she went ahead, been mazed on purpose, and she drank wine time on the maze. She didn't do any avera. There's no korban. You don't bring any korban. She didn't do anything wrong. But the pasuk says, the Gemara brings Isha Yifera Hashem Yisachla. Right, it's talking about this case in the Mishnah. She needs some form of atonement. So, and the Gemara talks about this, that it's a bad thing. And the Gemara talks about the opposite case also, right, where a person bring an asham taloi, right, he doesn't know if he did an avera. When you bring an asham taloi, you have one piece of shuma, one piece of chaylev. You don't know which one you ate. You still don't know. You bring an asham taloi, you need kapara. So the Gemara really equates the two and says they're sort of the same. So it doesn't really, So when I was speaking with the Rebbe, I said, no, it's much worse to have the wrong intention. If you don't do the avera, the intention, if you intend to do an avera b'meisa, that's worse. He said, no, of course not. He says the whole institution of a korban chatas, right, where you don't intend to do avera, but you do the avera, is b'shogeg, right? There you have to bring a korban. This one it doesn't say you need any form of recourse. There's no korban you bring. So obviously it's a lot worse when you don't intend to do avera, but you do the avera. The ma'isa is worse than the kavanah. And to me, it didn't make sense. Logic, I was becoming more from. I'm like, no, if you have kavanah doing avera b'mezid, even if you don't end up doing anything wrong, but your kavanah is bad. And I'll explain why I feel this way now, and I still feel I'm right. He was very adamant about it. He got very angry at me. He was very adamant about his side. The reason I believe that it's worse after many years of working on myself is that when you do an avera, when you do something amazing, even though it ended up not being an avera, maybe you became aware or didn't become aware, when you do something amazing, there's no concept of tshuva when you do something amazing, because you don't regret what you did, right? Right? It's very hard. Maybe the husband told her I was made for her. Maybe she should regretted what he did, but it's very possible she didn't regret. And as I've said many times, I believe mitzvahs and averos is not really the determining factor at the end of 120 years. It's really about your decision making. It applies to non-Jews as well. They don't have Torah mitzvahs. or they just have Zayin Mitzvahs B'nai Noach. Even the Torah, there's a lot of things in the world that are not decisions that are not regulated by the Torah. So ultimately, it comes down to decision making, and if you have to be on the train tracks, right? You can't let your train of thought, get off the tracks. You have to keep your train of thought. So if you do something b'shogeg, you make a mistake, and then you realize this thing, well, you'll regret that, and you can. That's the concept of tshuva. You remain on the tracks. Hashem gives you the ability to do tshuva. But if you do something amazing, you're off the tracks already because you've given up decision making. You rebelled against Hashem. I'm not doing what Hashem. I know this is what Hashem. I know this is the wrong thing. I'm going to do it anyway. There's no recourse over there. That's why there's no carbon over here. There's nothing to bring. The concept of carbon is you're doing tshuva, right? I'm going back on the path. I made a mistake. I'm bringing an animal and sacrificing on the mizbeach in order to get back on track. But if you did it by mazid, there's no recourse, and that ultimately throws you off the tracks. You'll never get back on the tracks. And chaval, it's terrible. It's water under the bridge. It's terrible. So that's really what I feel is worse. Now, from the Gemara, it doesn't really seem to say it's worse. However, there is two proofs to what I'm saying. And one proof is the Gemara. First of all, the Gemara says, right, why do I need all these cases? Right, the case of where he did it b'shogeg and then he finds out he did it not he did it b'shogeg and he bring it to Asham Tola. He's not sure if he did it on Aveira or not. And then the case where, like our Misha, where she does it in Mazid and intend them not being an Aveira. First, the Gemara says Srichan. Why do I need all these cases? The middle of Chav Gimel Aleph. Ditana Gabi Isha Hasam Hu Devaya Kavara Slicha. She needs Kavara Slicha. She needs Hashem to forgive her. Mishon Karali Suri Kamen. That should need kapara. If it said that case about Karban Hashem Tali, Niki is Surah. Now I'm noting that the first Havamina of the Gemara, the first one, which is probably the stronger svara, is right. It's worse, right? Where it was mechaven, like you said, mechaven doing aveira, right? So therefore she needs kapara. But someone who didn't have kavana, right? He didn't have aveira b'shogeg, or he doesn't even know he didn't have aveira b'shogeg. So in that case, maybe you don't need slicha kapara. So the first srichasa, the first, I think it's primacy. What you first would have thought, which makes more sense logically. The Gemara Chedesh know that all of them are bad or equally bad, but it's not equally bad because the first srichasa is the more logical thing. The second proof I want to bring is from Gimel on Beis, where the Gemara says, the Gemara talks about Yael. Yael did an Avera Lishma. She was together with Sisera in order to kill him, in order to save the Jews. She was together with him 7 times. I don't know, Nachum Yitzchak, the top of Gimel on Beis, towards the middle. Gedol Avera Lishma, Mitzvah Shalol Lishma. It's better doing Avera Lishma. Doing Avera, she was together with Sisera. It's an Avera to be together with a non-Jew. Lishma, maybe she was married. She was married. It was adultery. Avera Lishma, it's greater to do Avera Lishma for the right reasons, mean to save Klal Yisrael. Mitzvah Shalol Lishma. Do a mitzvah without the right intentions. So the Gemara says, what do you mean? It's good to even do mitzvah shalol lishma. So even at first, the Gemara says, right? The first one the Gemara wants to suggest, it's better to do an avera lishma. Now, when you do an avera lishma, meaning you had the right intentions, you did an avera. The ma'aseh was an avera, but you had the right intentions, right? So intentions are more important. Mitzvah shalol lishma, you did an action of a mitzvah, but you didn't do it for the right intentions. So you see that the kavanah, the intentions, are more important. Then the Gemara says, what do you mean? Mitzvah shalol lishma is also good. So the Gemara says, Ela ema kim mitzvah shalol lishma. It's exactly equal. Avera lishma is equal to mitzvah shalol lishma. Okay, so you'll say they're equal, right? One has the right kavanah, one has the right action. But you have to remember, the reason the Gemara says mitzvah shalol lishma is good is because eventually it'll bring you to do a mitzvah lishma. So if you didn't have that reason, that mitzvah shalol lishma is good because it'll bring you to do a mitzvah lishma, the mitzvah shalol lishma by itself is inferior to avera lishma. Avera lishma, technically, as the Gemara suggests, should be better. Kavanah is more important than the actual action. It's only because the action will eventually lead you. It has this added aspect that it actually leads you to do mitzvah lishma, so that's why it's more important. So you see from the Gemara that kavanah is more important than the actual action. That's why also when you have kavanah to do an avera, right? Kavanah to do an avera, it's worse to have kavanah to do an avera than do an avera b'shogeg, but do a ma'aseh avera. I believe that's true to this day. I hope you enjoyed today's share. See you in the next one.